We film a lot of fallow stalking in the southeast of England. Here the wild population is strong thanks to a history of parkland adorning grand houses. Then somebody makes a bad marriage, or there's a war. They can't pay for the upkeep of the walls or the fences, and the animals find a hole and make a break for it. In Scotland, fallow are not so prevalent, but they are here. On the Ardnamurchan Peninsula there is a population of about 100 animals. The cold, wet environment limits body size and fecundity.
Any idea what the population is of fallow in Scotland?
No, Simon, that's a good question, and off the top of my head I can't answer it. I don't think it's big. I think the sika population probably exceeds the fallow population, and there are a number of areas that they're pretty much hefty too. So you find them around Dunkeld, you find them around on Mull. There's a small group here in Ardnamurchan. I think there's 1 or 2 other places in Scotland that there are free living populations, like down in Dumfries and Galloway. Certainly down about Lockerbie and that part of the world there are fallow. And then there's at least 5 locations where there's park populations in Scotland. For here, I mean, if you zoom in on him, David, for here, that's one of our better bucks. So they don't reach the size of fallow in the south at all. We have got 1 or 2 bucks slightly bigger than him, but that for his age is one of the better bucks.
And would you say that the sika is better adapted to this environment?
They certainly, yeah, I would say they are. I mean, they're more of a woodland deer. The fallow deer seem to rely on and need more access, and we watch them here. They need access to better grazing and more woodland cover. They do well here in the grasslands and deciduous woodlands. But anybody, if you've asked people that keep Japanese and Manchurian sika in parks in the south, they'll tell you the sika are fat when the red deer are thin. So the sika seem to be able to utilise the environment and get more out of it. Would you agree?
Successful machine then, aren't they, really?
Well, I mean, part of the reason I think Japanese sika have been public enemy number 1 isn't purely the fact that there is a potential for them to crossbreed with red deer. The way they graze and browse and the way their digestive system works makes them particularly troublesome to foresters.
This morning, consultant ecologist Dr Cathy Mayne joins Ardnamurchan deer managers Niall and Stevie. Cathy is relatively new to stalking, and this will be her first fallow deer. She admits that the way she views the world and deer has changed since she picked up a rifle.
Hunting is probably one of the most valuable, environmentally immersive activities you can do. And bar the actual pulling of the trigger, that hunting experience needs you to be in the environment. You are part of it, and it's only when you become immersed in it as a predator that you shed a lot of the stuff, the baggage that you carry around as a kind of modern human.
I like the fact that you can have it almost what we call precision mode, which the triggers brakes really light.
Niall wants to remove a couple of older does today, so Stevie is also carrying his blazer.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to pop 5 rounds in the belly here below the bolt. So what our plan is today, this is the sort of the time of year, it's ideal weather for us because the weather's improved and the fallow have come out into all the open ground. So we don't shoot a great number of fallow, as you know, because we don't have a big population of them. But what we're looking for here today is 2 or 3 of the older does. And any of the same rules that apply to the red deer, any of the smaller fawns or kids that don't look like they're going to be great this winter, we'll whip them away now. So what we're going to do is I'll move us into position, but you and Stevie will be doing the shooting. Okay, so let's head off.
The approach is slow and steady.
She's feeding it. She's furthest to the right.
Once the doe is on its own, Cathy shoots.
Okay, through the front shoulders. We're ready to go now, David. A little bit back.
The sound of the shot and the reaction indicates the bullet placement is a little back on the animal.
Directly behind the buck now. She's walking in front of the buck.
A common one.
She's just bounced away. Wait a minute. Just wait. Ah, just wait a minute. You got her, David?
Yeah.
Number one's down.
Move to the right. Through.
She's see the one directly above the door is just shot, Stevie.
As the herd jockeys for position, Stevie takes a
The
second.
common doe, second from the right.
Second from the bigger of the two.
Yep. She's now furthest away. Good man. Good man.
Both animals are down.
Everything else there I'm content to let go, okay? We shot an old doe from one group and another old doe from the other group, so we wanted both of them away. They're not productive, they haven't produced youngsters the last season, and it's time to let younger animals come to the fore.
Yeah. Yes, I have.
Yep, you wanted to have popped that there, and what you've done is you've gone behind the shoulder.
Well, I was aiming for
Yeah,
there,
and what you've
but
happened is you've drifted back a bit. So it's the angle it's at. You've got an exit that way. But this is the animal that we were.
aren't they?
This is well, these are small. I mean, there's a lot of people that are regular viewers of Fieldsports that will look at these and going, these fallow are tiny.
They're quite soft, those pads at the back,
Yeah.
aren't they?
Well, that's because they're receptors, Cathy.
So that's the bit they feel with.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at deer, and you notice them do it actually when they're trying to get their attention, one of the things you'll see the fallow do, and all deer do it, you'll see them go like that.
Yeah. And
What-
is that them feeling?
Because they feel vibration through their feet. And one of the most interesting things you find when people go deer stalking in woodlands, and you see people do it a lot, and it fascinates me, it's a really basic mistake. You'll see them creep to the edge of the trees and they see a deer they want to shoot and they go. And they stick their stick in the ground and it goes and everything turns and looks at them and they kind of go, damn, spotted. And it's the vibration that sent the message to them, hi, I'm over here. So when you're looking at yourself, I mean, it's the first fallow deer you've shot.
Yeah.
Your background's very much an ecology background,
Yeah.
and particularly in the Scottish landscape. What's your feeling about them as a deer? I mean, what do you think?
They're an introduced species. So ideally they'd be put in the same box as sika, but they've been here a long, long time. Not here, but here in Britain a long, long time. And I guess that because they tend to have very static populations and territories, they stick to where they normally live. They don't have anything like the same threat. So they're non-native, but they're not invasive.
They're not colonising.
Non-native. They're not colonising new areas, and they're not, because they're on the limit of their population, they're not expanding. So they're not having to invade new territories. So from an invasive non-native point of view, no problem.
What I find interesting about the whole debate surrounding things like fallow and that is that if you try and connect it with things like feral goats, which are also in this same area on the edge of the woodland we're on here, there seems to be a lot less public disquiet, alarm or comment when you cull fallow that have been introduced to the area than you do when you cull goats that have been introduced to the area. But from a woodland point of view, I mean, your own opinion would be goats are a lot more harmful?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, goats are well known to eat pretty much anything they can get their teeth round. So, and goats are quite prolific breeders.
Yes.
2 kids every year, maybe more.
Yeah.
And they're well within their range. They're fairly robust. Their populations tend to increase rapidly. That's very different from fallow.
But as a method of control, sort of culling them, that you'd have no difficulty with
Culling goats?
Yeah.
No.
No.
I think there is a public perception that goats are a precious part of our natural heritage, and I would disagree with that. I would say they're feral. They're a product, people used to keep them. They're good meat, and they do a huge amount of damage. So if they are present in an area, they certainly need to be very heavily managed.
Yeah, I would agree with that entirely.
Not allowed to get away in the way that you don't need to manage fallow in the same way because they're not prolific reproducers.
And the idea is to try and get as much of that blood out as possible, as quickly as possible.
So what we're looking at here now, just to sort of take you to this moment, is that Cathy spent the last season with us, giving up her time, and actually she's been gillying and dragging deer off hillsides and shot a few deer with us, and now she's culled her first sika, her first fallow, her first red deer. So looming on the horizon now is DMQ level 2 assessment.
All
time.
you're effectively doing is separating that esophagus from the trachea as low down into the chest cavity as you can.
My right-hand man, Stevie, is going to take her through the process, and next time it'll be Cathy's turn.
One thing to remember is that every stalk is different. Wouldn't it be great, but dull, if every outing were textbook, surgically precise shot and a surgically precise gralloch in glorious conditions like today? But hunting is not like that, especially here in the Scottish Highlands, and we have to overcome challenges.
If you don't make mistakes, you won't know how to work with them, how to deal with them. If you don't make that mistake, you'll never learn.
The thing is, it's very easy for anybody, no matter how experienced they are, to make a mistake. The difference is when you make a mistake is how you deal with that mistake, how you limit that contamination, and what you do with it there, by getting your hand over the top of that incisement on the stomach wall lining, closing it off and getting it outside the carcass. That way, that green contamination is on the outside of the animal, not on the inside.
I have a huge amount to learn about deer management, and my thinking on ecological things has actually changed as I've learned more about deer management and about deer as a species as well. So by starting to get involved in deer management and then actually doing some myself, it's definitely broadened my horizons, changed the picture a wee bit for me too. Having come from an agency role where you don't have a lot of interaction with people on the ground, my understanding and appreciation of people's cultural heritage and the social and economic side of what happens here on the ground has changed and evolved, and that means that I see what we need to be doing in terms of natural environment differently from what I did before.
That sounds healthy, Cathy.
I think it's very healthy. No problem.
You can watch the full gralloch in a separate film. In the meantime, let's hear from Cathy about the environmental challenges on the slopes behind us. This is part of an oakwood regeneration plot. The Scottish Government is threatening to impose its own cull plan because the current administration believes there is not enough oak. Cathy says there never will be.
Behind us we have great regeneration if you're looking for birch, but we're not looking for birch because we have this idea cast in stone of what we should have, and it should have oak. The only way to get oak in that woodland behind me is to plant it. And actually probably that's what they would have done in the past to create the oak woods that we see further up the loch and closer to the shore. The easy thing to do is to use existing legislation and the existing challenging social situation with deer and blame the deer. We have a report that suggests to us that the deer are solely responsible for the lack of oak in the wood behind me, when yes, there are a handful now present in there, but mostly when there was regeneration happening there were no deer at all, and the fact that it is mostly birch actually has got nothing to do with the deer. But because the legislation is available, because there is apparently an agenda to address hunting, large-scale private landowners, that seems to be a good enough reason to pursue the deer management group for a control agreement. Now we can go down that route and we can destroy a sporting model, a number of jobs, we can hammer the deer, reduce the numbers dramatically, and it will make virtually no difference to the outcome of the woodland. And that's the real tragedy. We could ruin lives and livelihoods and actually be no better off because we just get more birch.
The sad reality is that you don't always get what you wish for, and assumption is well, you know the rest. You can say to yourself, if I fence here, the acorns shall become oak trees, but it's not true. If bracken gets here first, no oak, and unless deer are planting the bracken, they are not to blame. back of the larder, and the guys process the fallow. These animals may be aliens, but they are not really invasive, and in the numbers found here, they're not destructive. Sika, on the other hand, are a far trickier beast to get to grips with, and that's the species we will focus on next time. For more information about the Blaser R8 and the full range of Blaser optics, go to blaser.de.